Dapat po munang alamin or matukoy ang pangunahing problema ng bansa upang mapagtuunan ng pansin at mabigyan ng solusyon.
We should have a specific goals, do research, and make a policy that is fair for everyone.
Walang problema sa pulisiya. Iayos lang ang pagpapatupad.
Bago patubas ang batas, pag-aralan muna gusto ng government.
Two things, clarity and execution. Both, you need the communication and monitoring. As simple as that.
Mandato ng Philippine Institute for Development Studies o PIDS na gumawa ng mga pag-aaral at pananaliksik ng mga polisiya at programa ng pamahalaan at magbigay ng rekomendasyon sa mga mambabatas sa pagbabalangkas ng mga polisiyang makakatulong sa ating bansa. Sinusulong ng aming ahensya ang evidence-based policy making upang bigyan diin ng kahalagahan ng polisiya na batay sa datos at policy research na sumusuri sa tunay na kalagayan ng ating mga komunidad. Napakahalaga ng policy research, lalo na sa mga panahong dumadaan sa krisis ang ating bansa.
Kapag pulisiya ay pinag-aralan, susulong ang bayan!
In need of references for your research? Do you want a digital library that you can access for free anytime and anywhere? You don't have to look far. SERPI is here for you. SERPI is an online database of socioeconomic materials produced by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, government agencies, research and academic institutions, and international organizations based in the Philippines. It is the country's first online repository of socioeconomic information, created for policymakers and development practitioners, researchers, educators, and students. To access SERPI, just visit the PIDS website and click the SERPI widget under the Databases tab, or type serp-p.pids.gov.ph. SERPI has a wide variety of materials such as journal articles, books, research papers, working papers, policy notes, audiovisual materials, and more. As of 2022, SERPI has more than 60 partner institutions contributing knowledge resources to the database. SERPI provides a comprehensive coverage of references encompassing 22 research themes: labor and education, gender and development, poverty, technology and innovation, trade and industry, and many more. On the enhanced website of SERPI, you can filter your research by keyword or author, publication type, research theme, or year published, all at the same time. SERPI has more than 7,000 publications and audiovisual materials that you can access and download for free. What are you waiting for? Visit SERPI now. Socioeconomic Research Portal for the Philippines, innovating knowledge exchange and policy research.
So what is PIDS? For over 40 years, the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, or PIDS, has been the country's foremost socioeconomic think tank. It conducts rigorous and objective policy research and analyses that help the government in crafting relevant policies, plans, and programs in support of the country's long-term vision and development goals. PIDS pursues its mandate through three basic programs: research, dissemination, and outreach. Through its research program, PIDS identifies and prioritizes studies, develops proposals, and conducts research on priority areas. The results of these studies are then disseminated through different platforms, publications, online resources, PIDS Corner, seminars, and the Development Policy Research Month, or DPRM, held every September. To shed light on key policy issues, the advice and expertise of the Institute's research fellows are also sought by policymakers, government agencies, private sector, and civil society. Since 1977, PIDS has completed numerous policy studies on a wide range of development topics. This brand of service has then translated to policies and programs that have improved the lives of every Filipino. Philippine Institute for Development Studies, service through policy research.
Dapat po munang alamin or matukoy ang pangunahing problema ng bansa upang mapagtuunan ng pansin at mabigyan ng solusyon.
We should have specific goals, do research, and make a policy that is fair for everyone.
Walang problema sa pulisiya. Iayos lang ang pagpapatupad.
Bago patubas ang batas, pag-aralan muna gusto ng government.
Two things, clarity and execution. Both, you need the communication and monitoring. As simple as that.
Mandato ng Philippine Institute for Development Studies o PIDS na gumawa ng mga pag-aaral at pananaliksik ng mga polisiya at programa ng pamahalaan at magbigay ng rekomendasyon sa mga mambabatas sa pagbabalangkas ng mga polisiyang makakatulong sa ating bansa. Sinusulong ng aming ahensya ang evidence-based policy making upang bigyan diin ang kahalagahan ng polisiya na batay sa datos at policy research na sumusuri sa tunay na kalagayan ng ating mga komunidad. Napakahalaga ng policy research, lalo na sa mga panahong dumadaan sa krisis ang ating bansa.
Kapag pulisiya ay pinag-aralan, susulong ang bayan.
In need of references for your research? Do you want a digital library that you can access for free anytime and anywhere? You don't have to look far. SERPI is here for you. SERPI is an online database of socioeconomic materials produced by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. Government agencies, research and academic institutions, and international organizations based in the Philippines. It is the country's first online repository of socioeconomic information, created for policymakers and development practitioners, researchers, educators, and students. To access SERPI, just visit the PIDS website and click the SERPI widget under the Databases tab, or type serp-p.pids.gov.ph. SERPI has a wide variety of materials such as journal articles, books, research papers, working papers, policy notes, audiovisual materials, and more. As of 2022, SERPI has more than 60 partner institutions contributing knowledge resources to the database. SERPI provides a comprehensive coverage of references encompassing 22 research themes: labor and education, gender and development, poverty, technology and innovation, trade and industry, and many more. On the enhanced website of SERPI, you can filter your research by keyword or author, publication type, research theme, or year published, all at the same time. SERPI has more than 7,000 publications and audiovisual materials that you can access and download for free. What are you waiting for? Visit SERPI now. Socioeconomic Research Portal for the Philippines, innovating knowledge exchange and policy research.
So what is PIDS? For over 40 years, the Philippine Institute for Development Studies or PIDS has been the country's foremost socioeconomic think tank. It conducts rigorous and objective policy research and analyses that help the government in crafting relevant policies, plans, and programs in support of the country's long-term vision and development goals. PIDS pursues its mandate through three basic programs: research, dissemination, and outreach. Through its research program, PIDS identifies and prioritizes studies, develops proposals, and conducts research on priority areas. The results of these studies are then disseminated through different platforms, publications, online resources, PIDS Corner, seminars, and the Development Policy Research Month or DPRM held every September. To To shed light on key policy issues, the advice and expertise of the Institute's research fellows are also sought by policymakers, government agencies, private sector, and civil society. Since 1977, PIDS has completed numerous policy studies on a wide range of development topics. This brand of service has then translated to policies and programs that have improved the lives of every Filipino. Philippine Institute for Development Studies, service through policy research.
Welcome to the PIDS webinar series. Before we start our virtual event, we have some reminders. For attendees, your microphone is automatically muted upon entry. If you wish to join the discussion, click the Q&A icon, type your question, and click send. For Facebook viewers, you may send your question using the comment section. Remember to keep your questions concise and direct to the point. We will screen all questions to ensure that they are relevant to the webinar topic and the presentation. The moderator will read the questions during the open forum and cover as many as possible depending on the available time. This webinar is being recorded and live streamed on the PIDS and SERPI Facebook pages. The recording will also be made publicly available on the PIDS YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your active participation.
Welcome to the PIDS first webinar for this year, the macroeconomic prospects of the Philippines in 2024. We are very excited to see a lot of participants joining us today via Zoom and Facebook Live. This event is brought to you by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. I am Cha Kiwa, and I will be your guest moderator and host for today's event. Over the next 2 hours, we will hear various perspectives from our presenter and discussants. Dr. Margarita de Buque Gonzalez, one of the authors of the PED study Macroeconomic Outlook of the Philippines in 2023 to 2024 Prospects and Perils, will present the study and examine the economic performance of the country for 2022 and the first half of 2023. After the presentation, we will be joined by our discussants, from the Department of Finance Chief Economic Counselor, Undersecretary Zeno Ronald Abinoja, and the Bank of the Philippine Islands lead economist, Mr. Emilio June Neri Jr. Also joining the panelists are the co-authors of Dr. Maggie, research specialist, Mr. Mark Gerald Ruiz, and probably research analyst, Ms. Romana Maria El Miral. To kick off our event, let us welcome the PIDS President, Dr. Aniceto C. Orbeta Jr., to give us the opening remarks.
Good morning and welcome to our first public webinar this year titled Macroeconomic Prospects of the Philippines in 2024. First, allow me to acknowledge the presence of the following officials: Asian Development Bank Macroeconomic Research Division Director Abdul Abiad, Philippine Ambassador to Brunei Darussalam Maria Jocelyn Tirol Ignacio, Department of Energy Policy and Planning Bureau Director Michael Sino Cruz, Department of Interior and Local Government Caloocan City Director Rolene Javier, Senate Economic Planning Office Executive Director Merwin Salazar, Congressional Policy and Budget Research Department Executive Director Novel Bangsal, International Peace Leadership College President Venus Agustin, Asian Solidarity Economy Council Chairperson Benjamin Quiñones Jr., Foundation for Economic Freedom Director Rialina Dialca, Mindanao Coalition of Development NGO Networks Executive Director by Raisa May Anayatin. I would like to greet the various representatives from the government, academe, private sector, civil society, and media virtually present today and those watching through the PIDS and SERPI Facebook pages. In the previous year, the Philippines experienced economic growth at a rate of 5.6%, which is below target. However, a noteworthy trend was being observed with the reduction in inflation rates descending from a high of 8.7% in January 2023 to a significantly lower 2.8% by January 2024. This decrease could be attributed to government measures such as adjusting the interest rates. Additional factors contributing to this positive outlook included consistent remittance from overseas, enhancement in the employment landscape, financial stability, and optimistic business forecasts in specific industries. On the other hand, the ongoing issue of budget deficit challenges these positive indicators. The Bureau of Treasury's reports indicate a 34.4 billion peso deficit in October 2023, with prior years showing even more substantial discrepancies. This pattern, where government expenditure surpasses revenues, prompts concerns regarding the nation's long-term fiscal health. As we look toward the macroeconomic prospects of the Philippines in 2024, it is imperative to address the dual goals of fostering economic progress and managing the budgetary shortfall. The situation calls for strategic foresight, decisive policy making, and commitment to sustainable fiscal practices to ensure the enduring growth and stability of the Philippine economy. Therefore, we aim to present to you today the findings and recommendations of the PIDS study titled Macroeconomic Outlook of the Philippines in 2023-2024 Prospects and Perils, authored by former PIDS Research Fellow Margarita de Buque Gonzalez, Research Specialist Mark Gerald Ruiz, and Research Analyst Ramona Maria Miral. The study examined the country's economic performance and charted its potential future course. It presented conditions shaping the global and regional outlook, projections on growth and consumer prices, and prospects for 2024. To offer their expertise and insights, we have invited Department of Finance Chief Economic Counselor Undersecretary Gino Ronald Abinoha and Bank of the Philippine Islands lead economist Mr. Emilio Jun Neri to serve as our discussants. I invite everyone to stay until the end of the webinar and encourage you to participate in the open forum later actively. Together, let us understand the challenges and embrace the innovative solutions and actively participate in shaping our policies to ensure a brighter economic future for all Filipinos. Thank you very much, and we look forward to having you again in our succeeding webinars this year. I will now return the floor to our guest moderator, Ms. Kiwa.
Thank you so much, Dr. Orbeta. And before we proceed to the main presentation, as usually done, we have a poll question flashed on the screen. Let me read it. How do you think the Philippine economy is expected to perform in the year 2024? For those joining via Zoom, kindly click the link provided on the chat box. And those for joining via Facebook Live, kindly click the link provided on the comments section. Again, the question is, how do you think the Philippine economy is expected to perform in the year 2024? There are 4 options to choose from. Letter A, slow down and experience negative growth. B, remain stagnant with little to no growth. C, continue its current moderate growth pattern. And D, experience faster growth than in 2023. We have a lot of registrants, participants in this meeting, and we are live via PIDS Facebook page. We encourage everyone to respond to the poll. Okay, let's see what came out in the poll results. Okay, there are 86, I think. Yeah, 86 respondents. 4 out of 86 says slow down and experience. Oh, it's 98. I'm sorry. 98 respondents. 4 said slow down and experience negative growth. 14 out of 98 believe that it's remained stagnant while with little to no growth. And 46 out of 98 said continue its current moderate growth pattern. And lastly, experience faster growth than in 2023, 21 votes. So I also joined the 46 votes. Continue its current moderate growth pattern because our economy has sustained its growth, expanding by 5.6% in the fourth quarter of 2023 with our full year GDP for 2023 at 8.6%, which is higher than the pre-pandemic levels. While this growth is seen below our target of 6 to 7% for 2023, it keeps us in the position of being one of the best performing economies in Asia. Okay, if this trend continues, then the Philippines is performing well in a steady growth pattern in 2024. Anyway, we will delve into more details of this in the presentations and discussions later. As I mentioned earlier, our presenter, Dr. Margarita de Buque Gonzalez, or Dr. Maggie, is one of the authors of the study, Macroeconomic Outlook of the Philippines in 2023 to 2024 Prospects and Perils. She was a senior research fellow at the PIDS, and her research interests are in the areas of macroeconomics, monetary economics, financial economics, and development. The co-authors of Dr. Maggie are Mr. Mark Gerald C. Ruiz, the research specialist at the PIDS, and Ms. Ramona Maria L. Miral, the research analyst at PIDS. Just to give a brief background of the study is divided into 4 parts. Section 1 spells out the basis for growth forecasts and flags some immediate and long-term risks. Section 2 reports on the trends in key macroeconomic indicators and provides fiscal and monetary policy updates. Section 3 presents the macroeconomic outlook, starting with a summary of global, regional, and domestic conditions, and ending with the author's projections for growth and headline inflation. And lastly, Section 4 concludes by identifying policy-related risks and providing useful insights and recommendations. You may download a copy of the study using the link that will be provided in the chat box. Okay, let's move on to the presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, our presenter, Dr. Margarita de Buque Gonzalez, has published internationally on a range of topics such as financial condition indexes and monetary policy in Asia, and the impact of infrastructure in middle-income countries. Before joining PIDS, she was an associate professor at the University of the Philippines School of Economics, where she headed the Financial and International Economics Committee and Union Bank Center of Financial and Monetary Economics. She previously served as consultant to various government agencies, including the Central Bank and the Finance Department, and international financial institutions. Dr. Maggie used to be a regular contributor at the business section of the Philippine Daily Inquirer, where she won various journalism awards for her special reports and feature articles on the Philippine economy and finance. She obtained her PhD in economics from UPSE and her BS in psychology, magna cum laude, also from UP Diliman. She is now a principal researcher at the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. We are privileged to have you here today, Dr. Maggie, and you may take the floor.
Good morning. So glad to be here and so happy that you are all able to log on this morning. Okay, so our what I will present today is the first chapter actually of the Economic Policy Monitor of PIDS, Philippine Institute for Development Studies. So it's entitled Macroeconomic Prospects of the Philippines in 2023 and 2024, Prospects and Perils. So don't get worried about the title. I just like alliteration. So the perils there is a bit of a more dramatic flair. So it's really just prospects and risks. Okay. For our flow, next slide, please. This is how we will discuss it. First, we'll just give a very brief review of macro performance in 2022 and 2023, macro conditions going into 2024, then macro projections for the year, and then risks and recommendations. Next slide, please. So I'll just go very quickly here because I understand Yusek Zeno has limited has kindly shared his time with us, and we want to hear more from him later, so I'll make this very quick. So we know that in 2022, we saw a reopening and we saw a rather strong growth during the time. Some momentum was maintained until the first quarter of 2023. We saw a surprise reduction in public spending in Q2 of 2023, and that pulled down overall growth. And we saw some recovery in the second half of 2023. Okay, so for the other sectors, kindly refer to the paper we wrote regarding what happened to those sectors. Very briefly, we had wider trade deficit in 2022 because of the recovery, imports growing faster, which led to a widening of the deficit, and that has momentarily reversed and somehow reverted back again to a deficit this year. By the end of 2023, we had services powering growth on the production side, with industry continuing to provide support despite posting weaker growth. Then services and industry again decelerating in the first half of 2023, but again reversing and sort of picking up pace again in the second half of 2023. Next slide, please. So again, the big story in 2022, we all know this very well, was really the sharp rise in inflation. That peaked at 8.7% in January of 2023 and has gone down since. Most of the price pressures in 2022 were due to transport inflation, and mainly because we had geopolitical tensions during the period with the conflict, the Ukraine-Russia conflict. So again, last year we had a run-up in prices in August to September. Again, we're very familiar with this episode of inflation in food, such as in rice, in onions, etc. during that period. So a lot of supply side sourced inflation. Next slide, please. The big story also was regarding jobs, okay, regarding employment. So that was the positive side. Actually, very surprising. Post-pandemic, we saw unemployment. Of course, unemployment peaked during the pandemic. We saw it go back, normalize by the latter part of 2022, and it has actually been very low, at below 5% in the first half of 2023. Which is again a positive development. So services drove overall employment, with the sector having a quarterly average of 26.9 million jobs in 2022. In 2023, employment in services rose from January to April, shrank in July, but recovered in the subsequent periods. We don't have the slide here, but another development on the labor front is really the rise in wage and salary workers, with a simultaneous decline in own account and unpaid family workers. So again, that's sort of an optimistic spin on the labor story. Next slide, please. Okay, so again, we saw a deficit in the BOP. We saw a wider deficit and corresponding deficit in the BOP in 2022. And then that reversed as the deficit also, trade deficit, current account deficit also reversed, and that reversed to a 3.7 billion surplus in 2023. Okay, so the exchange rate was depreciating in 2022. Peaked in October of that year, and has started to go down, and ended 2023 at 55.6 pesos per dollar. So there was an appreciation during the year from the peak in October of last year. Okay, next slide, please. So there was a series of monetary policy rate hikes in 2022 to combat inflation. Inflation has slightly tapered, and that allowed our monetary authorities to hold the rate steady. But there was another 25 basis point increase in October, again to contain inflation expectations. And really, much of that coming after a series of also U.S. Fed rate hikes. And so if you look at the differential between Philippine and U.S. key policy rates, we saw a decline in the differential during 2022, and it has remained below 150 basis points, 1.5 percentage points, in the second half of 2023. Okay, so on the fiscal front, we saw a decline in the fiscal deficit, slight tapering of the fiscal deficit. We saw debt going down to about 60% of GDP in 2023. Still a rather safe portfolio, 79.4% were really long-term in tenor, and comprising domestic debt, about 70% comprising domestic debt. Okay, so this is what we're interested in, because that's the past already. What are the macro conditions going into 2024? So first, globally, we did see global economic recovery from COVID continue despite geopolitical tensions and commodity price shocks. But the macroeconomic outlook still remains rather uncertain in 2024. Inflation has decelerated globally, but remains high among emerging market and developing economies, except, so it's an except in Asia, and this is according to the IMF World Economic Outlook. So again, I just remind everyone, this was written in October of 2023. So the expectation of a significant slowdown in trade for 2023 and some recovery in 2024. So there is a bit more of an optimistic mood going into 2024. Next slide, please. Okay, so ASEAN 5 output is also anticipated to slow in the near term. So again, the near term there is really 2023. So this is mainly because of the lag effects of the monetary tightening that we saw in the different countries. If you look at the bar chart on the left, that's how much policy rates have changed. So most of the bars are going to the right. So meaning countries have been tightening except for Vietnam and China. So countries have been tightening, and that will have a lagged effect on growth in these economies. So there is we have seen that in 2023, only to a lesser extent in 2024. Okay, as monetary easing in the region may soon be seen by this year. Okay, in the region. I'm not talking specifically of the Philippines, but of the Asian ASEAN region. Okay, if you look at the forecast growth rates, Philippines and Vietnam are the front runners, sort of forecasted to have the highest rates of growth in the ASEAN 5 region. And also, if you look at the rightmost graph, the Philippines had the highest inflation, but again, that has come down. And again, Philippines and Vietnam, the hotter economies, are expected to have among the highest rates in the region. But again, expectations, those rates will start to go down. Next slide, please. Countries in developing Asia will also continue to face limited fiscal space in the near term. So again, we know that story. We had a series of, fiscal stimulus packages launched, public health measures that had to be undertaken, and that, and of course, a slowdown in the economies, which led to high deficits and an increase in debt ratios. And we have seen some consolidation in some countries in the ASEAN region, particularly in Indonesia and Thailand. Those are the ones that have been able to consolidate. The Philippines has somehow been able also to consolidate to some extent, but that will still remain to be a constraint for all these economies in the region in the near term. Next slide, please. So this is where we sort of have our value added. We have been maintaining a financial conditions index for the country. This is based on a paper I wrote with Dr. Goshoka Bautista a few years back. And I kept updating this even after we stopped writing that. Even after we had already published that paper, because it just contains so much information. If you look at the graph on the left side, the orange line there is your GDP growth, and the blue line is the financial conditions index. And I don't capture all the other crisis episodes. Need to believe me that whenever the blue line falls below the zero line, we will see a sort of very sharp fall in output growth, a sharp slowing of the economy. And so what we saw is that financial conditions in the Philippines had actually been surprisingly resilient until early 2023, because it has remained sort of on an optimistic level despite sharp monetary tightening. So if you look at the blue line, even through end of 2022 second part, you can see the blue line going up, meaning despite all the tightening, financial conditions had really not tightened as much as we had expected, meaning the tightening period was rather short. So this hitting the blue line hitting the zero line is what led us to have more pessimistic expectations about 2023, which actually we saw happen. And so what we're seeing now is again a tightening of financial conditions going through the end of into the end of 2023. So that's one thing to watch out for. If we look also at our Purchasing Managers Index (PMI) series, we saw PMI readings decline in 2023 from 2022. Values just hovered over the critical value of 50. Okay, so we know that the critical value is 50, and below that you would probably not see much expansion. If it's above 50, that would mean more expansion, greater expansion. So readings briefly went below 50 in July of 2023, both in the overall index and its components, which suggests, a slowing. But more recently, another sign is that the PMI index for retail and wholesale fell below the critical mark as of the last reading. But all the other sub-indexes have been above 50. So again, it's a mixed it's a mixed environment. So we still have to see what happens next. Next slide, please. Okay. So we also saw demand for loans moderate in 2020. We saw loans demand lending moderate in 2023. Of course, it's a different picture for household loans. We did see an upsurge in borrowing, household consumption borrowing. We saw an upsurge in, for instance, salary loans. Okay, so again, we see our consumers' consumption being maintained by probably this lending. But if you look at production loans, we have seen it go down. So some of the areas where lending growth has been negative is actually manufacturing and financial intermediation. So again, that's something that we need to look at going into 2024. Next slide, please. Okay, so the government will continue to pursue deficit reduction in the medium term. Actually, if you read back to our last year's issue, it was really anticipated that government spending growth will slow in 2023. It is actually baked into their medium-term program. Okay, so going forward, if they will pursue this, this will sort of remain something to watch whether or not how much they will be. So we will have Yusek Zeno later to explain what the government's plans moving forward are. So for now, what we are observing and what we're interpreting them, what our interpretation of their actions is they will pursue this plan, which is really to bring down debt from 60% to I think 50%, around 50% in several years' time. Now, if you read our paper, we did what we computed for the fiscal gap, and what we concluded there was maybe it is not very realistic to go back to pre-pandemic 40% debt to GDP. And I think that is also sort of reflected in what the government is doing now, because they're really not going back to that level yet. Okay. So finally, what is our macro outlook for 2024? Okay, so I have to just explain what the numbers in the parentheses are. So we usually do our forecasting October of the year before. So for 2023 forecast, we first forecast that in October of 2022. Okay, so in October of 2022, we were forecasting 4.5 to 5.5% growth in 2023, while the rest were at around 6% to 6.3%, except for IMF. IMF was at 5%, but they quickly changed that to, I think, about to 6%. But they adjusted it upwards. So we were sort of stuck in the 4.5 to 5.5% Okay, we're considered a bit pessimistic for a government think tank. Um, but yeah, so it did turn out to be slightly above our range. So it ended up at 5.6%. Our final number was 5.2%, and the rest are actually more in line with how it ended up um, eventually. So the credit raters were at 5.5, ADB 5.7, AMRO 5.9, IMF 5.3, and the World Bank at 6%. Okay, so that sort of is the story about our forecast. Now, we are forecasting October of 2023, we forecasted 2024 growth at 5.5 to 6%. So I don't know. I think we're still considered, or maybe we are already in line with the other forecasters. So the credit raters are at 5.9%, ADB is 6.2, AMRO is 6.5, IMF 5.9, World Bank 5.9, and the DBCC at 6.5 to 8%. Now, the reason that we cut it, I really was thinking about 5.5 to 6.5 based on our forecasting method, except for, as I said, what we were seeing in terms of monetary and financial conditions, what's happening on the lending side, what's happening to PMI. So we sort of cut it at 6%. But of course, animal spirits, if investments flow in, I think everybody is hoping that the investments will finally materialize. All the, the forays to get those investors into the country, hoping with that they would come in, then we can extend that to probably 5.5 to 6.5%. So that's for GDP growth. Next slide, please. For inflation, okay, so again, just to show you that we are human. So we forecasted 3.5 to 4.5%. Full belief in the central bank will be able to contain inflation. But fortunately, just too many supply shocks, that that were harder to contain than if we had just had the usual demand side disturbances. So we saw inflation 3.5 to 4.5, and the others were also along that lines, meaning slightly above the target band, but still below 5%. Of course, that did not turn out. We eventually saw 6% growth for the year, and we're happy. We're not happy that it's 6%, but we are right on mark for inflation at 6%, as were the other forecasters. Now, for this year, again, full belief in the Monetary Authority, 3%. We expect inflation to fall to within range. We do not see as many supply shocks this year than last year. Last year was really a different kind of year. Okay, so 3%, meaning back to within target band. Okay, some forecasts are still a bit more pessimistic about inflation, but we are more of the belief that it can be 3%, even lower, considering the base effects of high inflation in 2020. Okay, so that is our forecast for 2023, for 2024 for GDP growth and inflation. GDP growth at 5.5 to possibly 6.5%, and inflation center of the target band at 3%. Okay, so next slide, please. So we go to the part where I think everybody is interested to know what are the risks and recommendations. Again, I like alliteration, so I chose prospects and perils, but really just warnings, not really impending, doom and risk. So last year, we had a new government, and so we thought of coming up with several policy priorities and proposals that we thought were really important, and I think they remain relevant. So I'm just reiterating. It's really controlling inflation without harming growth, smoothing exchange rate volatility, but maintaining flexibility, rebuilding fiscal space to promote fiscal sustainability while protecting those that are vulnerable, being ready for financial tightening. We also already went through that, and uncertainty through vigilant and strategic monitoring, addressing pandemic scars through infrastructure and human capital investment, the latter in education and healthcare, and again, continuing the policy momentum to encourage investment, especially foreign direct investment, in order to sustain economic growth in the country. Okay, so a bit more on the pessimistic side. Next slide, please. So we're still warning against inflation risk. Remember, we wrote this again in October of 2023. So we saw some dissonance during that time, and we saw it fit to reiterate that maybe decisions on managing inflation should be that of the Monetary Authority, because that is how we help build the strength of our inflation targeting framework. Temptation to prioritize concerns apart from inflation should be resisted, especially particularly when inflation expectations are not yet fully under control. So we give importance to that because it does hurt the poor. Inflation does hurt the poor, and it's really important to maintain their purchasing power, and so it's really important to keep prices stable. So as inflation threats remain, there is continued need for high-frequency monitoring and a calibrated response to price developments. Okay, so we already said that last year, and the new governor has made analysis part of on top of the agenda, and I think that is, of course, an excellent direction to take. The government is urged to, we are urging the government to utilize every weapon in the arsenal to control inflation, particularly those that work through the supply side, such as easing import restrictions on agriculture products. I know this is rather, very heated opinions about this, but it is important to be able to do that, especially for products that may face shortages. And it's really important to come up with a better system for anticipating and addressing these shortages. We continue to advise against inflation-related policies that may have costly unintended consequences. We made that warning last year. If you read our issue last year, we already sort of spelled that out. And we continue to advise against policies in that direction going forward. Okay, next slide, please. The next one is probably where, yes, where USEC Zeno can help with this. So one risk is of stalled policy reform. Okay, so we know that we have the MTFF, the Medium-Term Fiscal Framework, and that this already outlines additional sources of revenue that may be expected from future measures. We reiterate that having a sound and credible plan remains critical in shaping market perceptions about the country's debt limits, and it is essential to keep financing costs down. Okay, so while it may not be feasible to immediately aim for a low debt ratio, we highlight the importance of such a plan, of a solid medium-term to even long-term fiscal consolidation plan. And ideally, this should really spell out the net gains from both the revenue and non-interest spending side that are large enough to make an impact on the country's fiscal health. Meaning, really lay down what are these things that will be rolled out in the next few years, sort of to manage the expectations of people and to keep premiums from going up and keeping the cost of financing low. Next slide, please. Okay, so a particular risk that we also want to sort of highlight is really the pensions, related to pensions. Again, a very heated debate about this, heated high emotions on this. We'd like to just offer a more, sort of independent voice on this, that we do have this pension scheme, which is, non-contributory. It's defined benefit, and there are no assets currently. So what is happening is that it is completely funded by the national government with spending carved out of the budget, and it features automatic indexation of pensions. Okay, so member pensions have typically exceeded the cost of supporting the active military in terms of MOE and CO. So uh, MOE and capital outlay of MEP agencies. So we have seen arrears already accumulating to 57 billion. That's as of 2021, with unmet payments also tracing to the salary adjustments several years earlier. So the way, again, the pension is set up is whenever you have salary increases of the active military, the pensions automatically increase as well. So you can just imagine what will happen if you have across the board increases. What will happen to the amount? Okay, so again, if we our advice there is if we could just sort of address that part, then we could be contributing to greater fiscal sustainability in the country. And again, we are not unaware of the debate. What we just like to say is that we should consider who among the MUP will bear the brunt of that fiscal adjustment. So I think the heart of the debate should be on that. Who will bear the brunt of that adjustment and the need for an equitable favor. Okay, so I'll just go to my last part. So I told to wrap up. So the risk to the National Investment Fund, I won't go through it entirely. I guess everyone is familiar with the issue. What we just like to highlight there is we have this fund where you have goals that you have dual goals. One is to promote socioeconomic development, and another is to make it profitable. Okay, so those are somehow conflicting goals. Okay, so there should be a way to sort of settle that. Okay, so the government's intentions and fundamental goals and ways of meeting these goals are unfortunately, again, we wrote this last year before we had a CEO of the MIF. So what we wished for was more clarity, need to cohesively frame investment beliefs and strategic vision for the fund, because that is how you now are able to clarify the mandate of the fund. Okay, our neighbors have already done this, and they have clear intentions and clear goals, and I'm sure we can also do the same. So while national investment should match the requirements of national development as what the government strives for in making the budget, the public budget, the likelihood of turning a profit may be higher if decisions are kept free of political complexities. And we believe that fund success will ultimately hinge on that, on how to settle the conflict and how to prevent these bad elements from creeping in. So the MIF, to make it work, should further clarify its role, find ways to handle multiple objectives, to protect the fund. Adherence to Santiago principles is a good starting point to build the credibility of the fund, a truly independent board and professional management team. Again, we wrote this in October last year, no CEO yet, and we're still waiting for the board. What will the board look like? And if you have a truly independent board and professional management team, that would more or less be able to sort of protect the good governance of the fund, minimize the risk of political interference, and make sure that both of the fund goals are met. So finally, last slide, is that we know that our fiscal position is still just recovering from the pandemic. So what one of our wishes also is that establishing the MIF will not draw from already scarce state funds, and the government must also ensure that the funding contributions of the GFIs, the main contributors, do not fuel uncertainty and harm the country's overall financial stability. So just things that have to be watched. Okay, the most beneficial role, so positive side, the most beneficial role we believe the fund can play is if it can help pull in new capital from the multilaterals, other sovereign funds, large institutional investors, even private funds, particularly in areas that need development, such as infrastructure. So that's the most positive role it can play if it can pull in new capital. So what it needs is really now a credible return benchmark, and that I think is a role of PIDS. So I hope whoever takes my place in PIDS will look at this. Is that we need a benchmark, and that benchmark should not be used to. It's not sort of um, not vulnerable to masking. Okay? Meaning, if you have that benchmark, you can not mask poor performance. Poor performance could be an array of things, could be fund misuse, it could be corruption, it could just be, not doing well, just an honest not doing well. So this will be an important challenge for the MIF and our economic managers who edit. I think that is the challenge for the economic managers to come up with this benchmark. And of course, the public, of course, you play a role. My last, recommendation as a PIDS fellow, I will really miss PIDS because PIDS allows us to give us independent views. I think the public, you should be the ones monitoring because this is your fund and you should be the ones to monitor. On that note, I'd like to thank PIDS, and I look forward to what the panelists will say, because I'm only a small voice in this area of debate, area of discussion. Cherry?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Maggie, for your presentation. I'm sure there are a lot of questions from our participants. Please stay online to join the open forum later. Okay, for any questions, please use the Q&A box on Zoom webinar. For Facebook participants, please use the comment section. Don't forget to include your name and your organization. For our Facebook audience and participants, you may download a copy of the study using the link provided in the comments section. So we now move on to the next part of the program. Allow me to introduce our next guest, our first discussant. He is a prominent economist, currently serving as the Chief Economic Counselor at the Department of Finance. He leads the Office of the Chief Economist in shaping fiscal policies, evaluating tax reforms, and crafting its macroeconomic forecasting and analytical tools. Previously, he was the managing director of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Research Department, guiding the monetary and financial policies. He has extensive experience in economic research, policy advising, and international collaboration, equipping him to navigate the complex realm of the Philippine economy. His academic background, with master's degrees in both economics and public administration, further complements his expertise. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome DOF Undersecretary Zeno Ronald Abinoja. Yusek Zeno, please.
Thank you, Charlie, for those kind words. Good morning, colleagues. Thank you. Thank you, Maggie, for that very insightful and interesting discussion for the group this morning. I did not prepare any slides for this one, but perhaps I can just talk about a few points based on some impressions that I have on the slides that were presented. I'm trying to organize my thoughts, but as I do that, maybe as a disclaimer, the remarks that I will be saying will be based on my observations. Probably it's best to wait for the official pronouncements of our principals, even as the DBCC, the Development Budget Coordinating Council, will be formally meeting in March next month. And will be updating us on the recent assessment of the macroeconomic outlook as well as the fiscal program. So let me start with inflation. So inflation continued to be one of the main areas of interest, of focus of economic managers right now, Maggie has mentioned, we have come from a peak of about 8.7, 8.6% inflation back in the first quarter of 2 years last year. And but recently, if we cut the inflation numbers, what we can see, for example, goods versus services, even services inflation are now going down, and that probably is also indicative of the strength of the downward momentum of recent inflation. If we cut it by food and non-food, non-food inflation actually has been within the target range of 2 to 4% for about 6, 7 months now. It was actually non-food that has kept inflation above target for most of last year. But even in the last inflation, food inflation has come down to within the target. So what is the thinking right now, the outlook of the inflation? The BSP, the Monetary Board, has been meeting on monetary policy stance, and today I think they will be releasing the assessment, the results of that assessment. But based on the previous discussions, the inflation numbers should go within target on average this year until 2025, coming from that 6% average last year. And we share the same view that both monetary and non-monetary policy have been gaining traction, driving inflation down over the past few quarters. But moving forward, we can focus or reiterate the importance of these direct measures, as mentioned in one of the slides, to address any emerging market pressures on prices. And right now, there's a host of non-market measures that are being discussed, implemented, or being pursued. Let me just cite three of these things. One is on El Nino. El Nino is now on its peak during the first quarter, although some models will predict that El Nino will return to neutral conditions by mid-year or sometime in the second quarter. But it's very important that we continue with the preparations to address the impact of El Nino. This refers to supporting agriculture in terms of the water requirements, both the water impounding, irrigation. The adoption of hybrid seeds have been done during this cropping cycle and shifting of the crop cycle so that they will try to avoid the peak impact of El Nino. And based on our colleagues from DA, they thought that this has been one of the crop seasons where hybrid rice has been adopted quite substantially, probably a peak of around 60% of those that were planted in this cropping cycle will be hybrid drought-resistant varieties. A second one, aside from those El Nino plan initiatives, the emphasis on looking at the entire supply chain for the agricultural sector is very important and address some of the disruptions or the obstacles that impede the lowering or the increasing the supply of key commodities and moderating food inflation. So this is also being done right now across the entire government to make sure that from the inputs to the production, marketing, as well as market behavior are being looked at very closely, where we can try to improve further the support to agriculture and increase supply and lower or moderate inflation on key commodity prices. A third one, an interim measure that's being done is to closely and regularly assess supply-demand conditions so that if there is a need to temporarily increase or resort to importation of key commodities, this will be done well in advance and in an organized manner. So the Interagency Committee on Inflation and Market Outlook has been doing this. DA and NEDA has been at the forefront in assessing supply-demand conditions. The last result of these discussions contributed to the signing of the EO, lowering temporarily the tariff rates for certain commodities like rice, corn, and pork until the end of this year. It will be reassessed again if there's a need to renew it next year, let's say, or there's no longer need to renew it because we continue to support domestic producers. A fourth important component of the inflation mitigation is are the different programs to support the vulnerable sectors. So this refers to the agri-fishery sector, the transport sector. And right now, I'm reminded based on what is happening in the oil market. Right now, oil markets, international oil prices are hovering near $80 per barrel. And if we have that reach consistently for over a month or for about a month, that will trigger the release certain programs to assist those that could be affected by higher oil prices. So the GAA right now, the budget law, is an improvement in that we only need about a month worth of a breach in the threshold before the assistance is triggered. It used to be that we have to wait for 3 months, but it was thought that the assistance could come into date if we wait for a 3-month breach of the threshold levels. So inflation continued to be at the forefront of the discussions by the economic managers, as mentioned by Maggie. Food inflation is very important for the bottom deciles of the income distribution. The bottom 30% has, for example, rice constituting up to 20% of their consumption basket. So it's very important that food inflation is addressed as soon as possible and will continue to go down. Now, let me turn to some thoughts on output. So on output, the recent performance indicates a broad-based type of expansion with all sectors contributing to output. But at the same time, if you look at different or some granular aspects of the GNP numbers, some items need to recover, for example, to fully reach or to go back to 2019 levels. And here I refer, for example, if you look at investments, it's growing consistently, but still slightly below 2019 levels. If you look at different production sectors, there are also certain sectors, production sectors, that are still below 2019 levels. So that's one of the challenges right now, but it could also mean a possible source of growth moving forward as these sectors recover and as the government continue to intervene to provide support for these sectors or different segments of the aggregate demand. The DDCC is meeting right now. It has started to meet since January on the technical level and to some extent also at the cabinet level to look at both inflation and output outlook over the near term. And the thinking right now is that we should we should recognize some of the challenges that we have in terms of the operating environment. Externally, we continue to have geopolitical events. There are some pressures in some of the commodities internationally, given these geopolitical events. There are some uncertainty in the growth outlook as well as the stance of monetary policy in advanced economies. So these are some things that need to be looked at. Domestically, we have had a significant increase in monetary policy rates over a tightening cycle, and probably 2024 is the time where we will experience the peak impact of all these monetary policy actions in the past. But the assessment is that it was calibrated quite carefully in terms of incremental steps and in terms of the cumulative amounts, such that a balance has been reached in terms of guiding inflation expectations and inflation outcomes towards a target, but at the same time providing support to still providing some support to output. So we are looking at it. The current targets right now are 6.5% to 8% for this year, all the way to 2028. It is going to be reviewed, taking into account, as I've said, developments externally and domestically, including developments on the fiscal front. So now I move quickly to the fiscal front. Last year, the deficit number, the target is 6.1% of GDP. We think we have reached that target. We are within that target. Maybe it could be off by about 0.1, but it signifies the continuation of the gradual fiscal consolidation process, where we had a fiscal deficit of more than 8% at the peak of the crisis. 2022, we are down to 7.3%. Last year, we were probably around 6.1%, and this year, the current target is about 5.1%. The same thing can be said in terms of debt ratios. We were able to stabilize probably the debt ratios to slightly above 60% of GDP numbers. 60% of GDP in the past 2 years, 2022, 2023. And hopefully, we can show a firmer bending of that curve below the 60% level in the next 2 years as we narrow the fiscal deficit. One driver of the fiscal numbers, one key component will be both the tax as well as the non-tax revenue. The pronouncements right now of our key economic managers is that we can put equal emphasis on non-tax revenue measures. So the revenue measures that have been pushed last year, it will be pushed again this year, but probably some of them may have to be reviewed in terms of the features as well as the timing of some of these revenue measures. So an important aspect now will be in the area of non-tax revenue. So this will pertain to improvements in administrative efficiency. And here we are helped by, for example, technical assistance from the multilaterals to improve the operations of BIR, DOC, so we can maximize the revenue effort coming from the existing revenue structure. Privatization also will be an important aspect, as well as other non-tax revenues like fees and charges. On the expenditure side, so the aim for the overall fiscal program will continue to be fiscal consolidation. The trajectory is definitely a downward trajectory for both the deficit and the debt. What is being discussed right now is as we look at inflation, growth, and where we are in terms of both revenue and non-tax revenue plans, with the pace, the slope of that curve be refined moving forward. So this is something that is being looked at right now, but definitely the commitment for fiscal consolidation and reducing the debt numbers as a percent of GDP remains firm. That will be driven by both the revenue, which I have mentioned already very briefly, and also on the spending side. On the spending side, we have unwound most of the pandemic era measures. So expenditures could be hovering at around 20 to 21% of GDP moving forward. But what is important is that even as we have this expenditure within that narrow range, from about 24% of GDP at the heart of the pandemic, it could still be referred to as a growth-friendly fiscal consolidation process because of the emphasis, the quality. It emphasizes of at least of spending of at least 5% of GDP on infrastructure, education, health, and social services will continue to be the bulk of the budget for each year over the next 6 years. So that continues to be the commitment in terms of the fiscal authorities. So my time is up, but let me just probably mention 2 or 3 things. First, on the current account deficit, so it has been narrowing down, but one important key point to note is that we have had surpluses for about a decade in terms of the current account. It became negative when investment ratios began to increase, particularly when we invested about more than 22% of GDP, and that has translated to deficit. So that pertains to a deficit that is, in a sense, growth promoting. It's a deficit that invests on our future potential capacity. And we think that it is sustainable for that part, and at the same time, it is partially supported by the invisibles, that is the remittances, BPO revenues, as well as the recovery of tourism. The GIR, gross international reserves, also continue to be adequate, and that could also help stabilize the external sector account. Now, the last point on the MIC, the Maharlika Investment Corporation. So the board has been constituted. We now have a president, a CEO for the MIP, and the board has also been filled up. Both the independent as well as the regular director. I think we still lack 1 seat, and all of them are professionals, they're well respected in their industry, and we think that they can help provide guidance and credibility to the plan of the MIP. The MIP will be focused on profitable investments because the aim is intergenerational transfers. So you have to earn, get some internal assets so that future generations can benefit from this particular vehicle. But at the same time, the investment destinations will be those that are consistent with the development economic growth agenda of government. So it is in that sense that those 2 objectives are harmonized, but the paramount is to make sure that they continue to be profitable during its operation. So I stop here. Hopefully I was able to provide some flavor on the presentation of Maggie, and maybe I have a couple of questions if there are, but my apologies if I have to step out soon and go to another meeting, but thank you very much for inviting us for this opportunity to be a participant in this morning's discussions on the macroeconomic outlook. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yusek Zino. So since you cannot stay further to join the open forum later, before you leave, sir, as you said, Dr. Maggie, you can ask your questions or reaction to Yusek Zino's insights.
Okay. I thought if there are questions from the audience that were lined up, I think there were several for Zino. For you.
You might want to pick up some questions.
Yeah. Well.
Okay, there's one question. What other concerns aside from inflation should not be prioritized, and how are these related to the independence of the monetary authority?
Thank you. Yeah, so thank you. There are a lot of priorities right now, but 3 things readily come up. If we are looking at the near-term growth prospects, inflation is one of those top 3 concerns. If we have to grow over the near term and support consumption spending and provide macro stability for investments, the inflation has to go down and to be within target this year and over the the next 2 years. So that is a priority. Second, we want the government to continue to provide support to the economy. So we want they are making sure that implementation of the budget is on time and is done efficiently. So budget execution is an important agenda right now in terms of particularly for near-term goals. So that means infrastructure and the socio-economic projects should be rolled out on time to support the economy. A third one is to get more participation from the private sector. So they are looking at right now how to further improve the business climate. There are a lot of suggestions, particularly on regulations, both tax as well as non-related tax regulations that could help business expand their footprint in the Philippines or even attract new investments. And this is an important priority right now so we can generate jobs, continue to have that improvement in our labor numbers. So over the near term, these are offhand the three top priorities that the economic managers are discussing: inflation, budget execution, and then promoting private sector investments across different segments of the economy. And on that inflation, agriculture will certainly, the support to agriculture will certainly be prominent. With food inflation right now, within the target range, we want to avoid any uptick in food inflation that could have been addressed in time by timely interventions, both from the public as well as the private sector.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
So, can you take another question, sir?
One more.
Okay, just one more. Yes, sir. So from Ms. Madeleine De Jesus of the Australian Embassy, how does the 2024 national budget look in terms of how priorities will contribute to a more inclusive growth?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Now, my understanding is that based on our legal framework, the annual budget of the national government should have certain sectors as key priorities. This pertains to education, health, and social services. So that is already embedded in the legal framework, and that is reflected each time the national government proposes a budget to Congress. And Congress has been very supportive in that respect, making sure that these are projects that address these particular sectors. Now, an important emerging issue right now in terms of budget formulation over the past few years is how to improve climate change resiliency, and as well as making sure that there are provisions for both mitigation as well as addressing the impact of climate. This has also been an important part of the discussions in crafting the budget. So these two things we think promote inclusiveness as they pertain to services and projects that really affect lower segments of the society, as well as promote the creation of more jobs and uplift the average income for Filipino households. Those are just some quick thoughts on that question. So thank you very much for those questions.
All right,
Can I
thank you.
have one more question?
Yes, ma'am.
To
Dr.
end?
Maggie, go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, so Sexine, you mentioned earlier that there are plans for the DBCC to adjust the range of forecasts for GDP output growth. Would be the direction of the adjustment, if you are free to divulge. And as you know, sitting on your perch as government in a government, very influential government agency, what are you looking at as the important drivers uh, that make your forecast different? For instance, our forecast, maybe we are less optimistic because we don't have the full view that you have. So what would that be? So that
Yeah,
would be
so
my
thank you, Maggie, for that question. So maybe let me clarify. The DBCC is reviewing and will review formally the macroeconomic framework and macroeconomic assumptions. It will be released in March. Whether there will be a change or not, I cannot say this time. We don't want to preempt the result of that discussion. But the flavor of discussion right now, what I've just shared, is that they are looking at seriously at some of the challenges that we have right now in the operating environment. And if we recognize those challenges, uh, it will have to be reflected in the macroeconomic framework. Whether there will be a change when we do that, we will have the result by March coming out of these discussions and analysis from the different agencies. Now, right now it stands at least 6.5 up to 8%. Now, those numbers were crafted about 2-3 years ago, and since then we've seen a lot of developments, particularly externally, both in terms of geopolitics, geofragmentation, changes in the prospects of our trading partners. Now, the government has also adopted measures in response to those challenges. So the thinking right now is that domestic demand will continue to be the dominant aspect of growth drivers over the near term, with the external sector being a drag for the last few years now. This is not something new for us. We have done this, for example, post GFC. For a decade, the GDP was expanding by about 6.5% since 2008, 2009. And most of that is because of almost double-digit expansion in domestic demand, consumption, investment, and government spending. So that will be a key aspect of monetary policy intervention moving forward to make sure that domestic demand continue to be resilient. And this is the underlying, those set of measures, the underlying reason why probably the target remains at 6.5%. Now we are reviewing it right now, at least 6.5. So now we are reviewing it, and we'll see what will be the results of that, given all these considerations. So thank you, Maggie, for that question.
thanks, Nino.
Okay, thank you so much, Yusek Zino and Dr. Maggie. Thank you, Yusek Zino, for your time and, of course, for your insights to the study presented. We really appreciate squeezing in this webinar into your schedule despite your busy schedule. So the PIDS looks forward to having you again in our future events. Let's give him a warm-up applause. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to join the group this morning. Okay, have a good day, and good luck, and have a discussion the rest of the morning.
Thank you so much. Yusek. Okay. All right. Now moving on, allow me to introduce our next discussant. He is the lead economist at the Bank of the Philippine Islands. Before joining the BPI, he served as an economics and banking sector analyst for a former monetary board member. He was a consultant at the ADB and a lecturer on monetary and fiscal policy at the University of Asia and the Pacific. He leads a team that consistently ranks at the top of surveys for analysts conducted by Bloomberg, Asia Money, and The Asset. Our speaker was also ranked #1 among local economists by the Department of Finance as having the most accurate gross domestic product growth projections from 2016 to 2018. He was also the president of the Philippine Economic Society in 2020. More recently, he was ranked number 3, Best Local Currency Bond Individual for Research in the Asset Benchmark Research Awards 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Emilio June Neri Jr. Sir June?
Yes, thank you very much, Cha. Are you able to hear me?
Loud and clear, sir.
Okay, thank you. First, I'd like to thank the PIDS for always inviting BPI and some of the Ayala Group companies in their activities. We are very honored to be a part of your activities, and more importantly, Doc Maggie's invitation is a crucial element in my decision to join this, because aside from from being a friend, she will be joining the BSP soon, and I want to have good relations with the Bangko Sentral, our regulator. No? So I want to make sure that our regulators are happy with what BPI is doing. So let me now share my screen with you. Again, this is more of a private sector perspective. We don't look at the poverty rates as much as maybe developmental economies and those types of indicators. No? But what I plan to do is to cover these areas, no? These 4 areas. No? So part 4, probably I won't be able to finish, no? But hopefully I'll be able to discuss the first 3 in reaction to Doc Maggie's presentation. By the way, thank you also to Doc Zino for a very informative presentation. No? He's also very close to the hearts of the BSP. That's why I have to, be nice to him and make sure that BPI participates in today's event. So the first thing I want to comment on is the public sector spending drag from in 2023. No? Our estimates show that the economy would have grown 5.9% if only the government spent in 2023 what it spent in 2022. No? In other words, if there were zero growth in government expenditures in the national income accounts, that's consumption expenditure, if I'm not mistaken, we would have grown by 5.9%. And if they had spent a little bit more and maybe put it in agriculture, maybe inflation would not have been that high, and that would have boosted domestic consumption a little bit, maybe bring it up to the 6% target. So we would have been able to reach the 6% target if only government expenditures were on track. No? So it's crucial, therefore. No? So I'll now move to my first slide. It's very crucial, therefore, that we find out exactly what caused that decline in public sector expenditures. Was it because of the local governments not being able to mobilize their planned expenditures? Was it because of the new agencies, the new heads of the agencies, like the Department of Environment, for example, would have had a very different maybe philosophy compared to the previous administration, that it led to a slowdown in spending. So I'm just reminded of 2011 when Mr. Aquino sat to be president, that his first year in office was really a very big underspending picture for the public sector. And he was able to make up for it from 2012 onwards. No? So if that is going to be the case for us again in this episode, in this administration, then there could be some optimism on the outlook for the rest of the term of the Marcos Jr. administration. No? But if the reasons are very different from the 2011 episode, then definitely the targets of 6.5% to 8% will be, I think, very difficult to achieve. No? So next, here I'm just showing the tables that came from the PSA, where it's very clear that it was exports and government expenditures which led to the slowdown of the economy to 5.6%. Sorry, apologies. Full year government spending was 0.4%. Sorry. If they had only repeated 2022 expenditure growth, we would have grown a lot stronger. No? Okay, so again, let me move forward to the next. Yeah, the next topic I want to talk about is, again, anticipating that now Doc Maggie will be moving to the Bangko Sentral. No? And I would not have discussed this if she would still be in the PIDS, but I'm happy that she's moving there, so we can share our opinion in this topic. No, so very clear in Doc Maggie's presentation earlier is the point about rate hikes. No, and we need the need to balance that, because if we don't hike in a timely manner, the BSP doesn't adjust monetary policy settings in a timely manner, inflation will affect the economy negatively. On the other hand, we need to balance that with the negative effects of higher interest rates. My question is, or really, I guess the challenge is what is the relevant range, no? Where we see interest rate hikes really affecting the economy negatively. No? In fact, I would also like to ask, isn't negative real interest rates or very, very low nominal interest rates also detrimental to the economy because it has side effects? Now, China has a property bubble. They are experiencing deflation. Why? Because they had so many years of very low interest rates, just like Japan in the 1980s, now in negative interest rates, that asset markets have become so expensive, and all of these negative effects to overall demand can be felt today. So, I mean, I won't discuss that anymore, the zombie companies, no, and how they're developed by negative interest rates. But more importantly, does the range matter? So we increased the policy rate by 450 basis points, no? From 2022 to late last year. That 450 basis points came from 2 to 6.5. My question is, if we do our elasticity analysis of a 450 basis point increase, is it the same, or do we come up with the same elasticity estimate if it moves up from 6 to what's 4.5 plus 6? 10.5%, no? Because that is, I think, really more damaging, no? If you increase policy rates at a certain level by so much, the contractionary impact is probably more meaningful. But if you're coming from 2% to 6.5%, knowing that inflation in the Philippines in maybe the last 20 years averages 3%, it's really just a normalization of monetary policy settings. It's not really tightening in the same way that you would tighten from 8 to 12% or 6 to 10%. 2 to 6 is different in that respect. They're both 450 basis points, but the impact on the economy could be very different. Okay, that's the only point I want to make about that. That's something, maybe it's not a hard and fast rule that every percentage point would cause a decline in the economy of this much. It should be cognizant of where exactly it happened. So the issue of where it is changed also matters. Okay, so I'll leave that topic for already. No, anyway, just as a follow through, even if we hike to 6.5%, just to illustrate, why did the unemployment rate even fall to 3.1%? So maybe that 4.5 percentage point increase would have been a lot different, or at least the way we understand policy rate hikes in the past, in the 90s, in the 80s, when we were increasing from 8 to 12 or 12 to 16, is very different if you normalize policy from 2 to 6. No? And that may be the impact on output and employment is not as meaningful. Also, we heard from the BIS in their annual report last June that maybe we should not be, because a lot of players in the market are already asking for rate cuts, no? This early when they saw the 2.8 inflation. We want a rate cut already. Our response to that is maybe it could be a little bit premature, no, to be asking, because we're not really sure. I'll be showing some risks later on. But I think more importantly, we shouldn't be overstretching monetary policy as if it were an elixir. It's as a potion that will cure all our problems, when the reality is we really need to carry out structural reform. Many efforts to improve human capital, productivity, and the like that have already been proposed by PIDS, by NEDA in their Philippine Development Plan. So let's not rely too much on monetary policy to boost the economy's performance. Now, in this part, I just want to highlight some very important challenges to the supply. So what is climate change doing to inflation? Number one, El Nino and La Nina. Doc Zeno talked about that earlier. I think also important is that energy will continue to be more expensive as we comply with the sustainability goals. No? They're really more expensive than the traditional or the non-renewable types of energy. The other is trade tensions. What's going to happen if Mr. Trump wins again in November? What's going to happen if all of these protectionist policies continue? It will probably make the cost of labor, which is very expensive in the US now. The last average hourly earnings print in the US is 4.5%. How can they reach their 2% target if their hourly earnings increase 4.5% year over year? So those continue to be very important considerations before we look at rate cuts. COVID-19, how has it changed? It has changed the habits of a lot of consumers. So all of these will affect supply challenges going forward. Here, in particular, rice. Again, Doc Zeno touched on this slightly. What we want to illustrate here is so far the impact of rice to inflation has been 2% of the 2.8 headline number. And that's because the year-on-year increase is around 20%. So by the time we get to the summer months, if we need to import, we will have to import Thai and Vietnam rice, which are 38 and 42% more expensive compared to the previous year. India will not sell because they have elections. They don't want to sell basmati rice. Okay, so again, I just want to show the chart illustrating that right now the contribution of rice is 2 out of the 2.8 percentage points. By the time we get to the summer months, what will be the contribution of rice? If it's 3 or 4, then we only have a few to add, that will bring us to the 4% target again. And therefore, it may be premature to be talking about rate cuts, at least in the first semester of this year. Okay, now I move to another topic, another risk element that maybe we need to consider is the fragility of banks worldwide. This time last year, or 11 months ago, we had the Silicon Valley Bank being closed and declaring bankruptcy. Right now, the hottest topic is the New York Community Bank, where the price of the stock of the company fell by, I think, more than 50% because of concerns about commercial real estate loans turning sour. So this is something we need to watch very closely. And I'm glad, again, Doc Maggie is already in the BSP to appreciate these things more. I don't know if I have some more. Yeah, so I just want to share a few points about our own deck or our own presentation on our outlook for 2024. To us, we think there will be an acceleration in growth this year just because inflation will fall below 4, and because PIDS thinks it's 3, our own forecast is around 3.5 to 4. In either case, we think the consumer really benefit from slower inflation. Record low unemployment rate. Again, this is allowing consumers to pay for their loans on time. We don't experience any non-performing loans in significant rise in non-performing loans because people have jobs. In BPI, our credit card loans are up 38% year over year, and there has been no deterioration in credit cards. Loans to real estate is now growing at double-digit rates again. Not since the pandemic did this happen. Vehicle sales, record high. The last one was in 2017. We beat it last year with 440,000. This year, around 500,000 will be sold in our estimate. Manufacturing, the PMI leading indicator continues to be positive for the Philippines. Hopefully, this can be sustained. In the second half of this year, we think midterm election-related spending will already be seen because 2025 is already midterm elections. And then finally, BSP will probably have a chance to reduce interest rates, but not in the first semester, maybe in the second half of this year. And that's contingent on whether the Fed can actually carry out a cut itself. So I guess that's most of all of what I can share this morning, and also share with you our projections for a few economic indicators, including our view that the peso could strengthen even if we have a current account deficit, just because the US is expected to start cutting rates. In previous episodes of US rate cuts, it would tend to lead to a strengthening of the peso. This will help us achieve our inflation target. And with slower inflation, we think the acceleration of household consumption in 4Q will actually even be faster in 2024 after 2 quarters of slowing down, 7 quarters of slowing down, I believe. And then for full year growth, we think 6.3 is achievable. So my time is up. I have 5 seconds to go. I'd like to end my presentation there. Thank you very much for the opportunity again, PIDS, and of course, Doc Maggie. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Sir June. Please stay online for the open forum. So to start the panel discussion, may I ask first, Dr. Maggie, any thoughts on the presentation of Sir June?
Oh.
Sorry, ma'am.
Okay. Well, I got pressured by yeah. So this is the difference. So now I have to be more measured in speaking. So you're talking about threshold effects concerning, impact of tightening. So you're saying that if you're tightening at a higher rate, then that would be damaging. Well, more damaging. Well, I don't know which word to. If you start at a higher rate, then that would have a more negative effect. And that you're saying you're starting from low, and just like from 2 to moving up to 6, that would be less of. So yeah, so I think a part of that also rests upon you guys, because as we know, the way monetary policy works, it's either it works directly by killing the momentum, or by fixing the expectations of the public and of the market. So yeah, so that's where the split will go. So as I mentioned earlier, there's a move now in the central bank to go more technical into those things, and really try to measure, to calibrate the responses. And so yeah, so we are open to that kind of looking more closely at whether or not levels matter when we do these things. Yes, I guess that's what I can say about that. So I noticed you have, what's your growth expectation? It's 6 point, is it 6.3?
6.3, yes.
So yeah, so I'd like to ask the same question I asked you, Zeno. What goes into that? What is baked into that 6.3? And you actually have higher inflation expectations that we do at 3.7. So also, what explains those numbers?
Yeah, well, our key thesis for faster performance in 2024 are two elements. Again, number one, if inflation does slow down to 3.7, because we've had 5.8 and 6 in the last 2 years, we feel that the consumer will have more confidence. My boss would call it sticker shock, because of the rapid increase in prices in very crucial items the last 2 years. People have hesitated to spend as aggressively than they would have done. Discretionary spending on appliances, these things we think were held back because people were making sure that they had the budget for the basics first. So we feel that that's a very crucial element for consumption to recover. Even investments, we think, because investments tend to respond to expectations about consumption. No? Just as an example, Philippine Airlines and Cebu Pacific, because of them, capital formation managed to grow double digits in the fourth quarter of last year. This 345% growth in purchase of planes, no, is in anticipation of demand. No? They actually realized that they did not have enough fleet to respond to tourism actually improving further this year. Our latest tally is our tourist arrivals are only 82% so far this year, last year, and it looks like it will hit 100% or more than 7 million visitors, no, with Pogo, with or without Pogo, that is, no. So those are, we think, the major elements, no. Again, the real estate sector continues to be in transition, just like the rest of Southeast Asia. Many are suffering from office inventory, no? Too much supply of office and too much supply of residential because the POGOs pulled out. And for office, it's because COVID has changed the habits of workers, no? From getting used to, from a habit of 8 to 5, 8 in the morning to 5. Now, some days of the week, they work from home. And so the office setup that companies now ask for are very different. So they don't want to rent the old configurations. They want to rent new ones. So the property companies are, they have so much inventory of unwanted space. But looks like some segments of the property sector are already starting to show very strong recovery, especially residential outside Metro Manila, where prices have continued to increase. No? Am I answering too long already, Doc Maggie?
No, actually, I agree because that's also in our report.
Yeah, okay.
And I think Yusek Zeno mentioned about some sectors that are still at pre-pandemic level. Not yet,
yes.
sorry, not yet gone back
like
to
construction. Private
yes,
construction is still far behind. And our view is because of this this strong demand in residential real estate in the provinces, no, because of work from home, as long as power and internet is stable, this will continue to be a source of strength for the sector. And then number two, we think by the second half, and I'm already starting to see billboards actually of some politicians in EDSA and starting to campaign for the midterm elections. We think that this will pick up further in the second semester of this year, allowing us to achieve this 6.3. Again, this is still below the 6.5 to 8% that the government is aspiring for, which we think will only be achievable if, again, we move forward or go through with the plans of the PDP and maybe some other reforms. We are not allowed to comment on Maharlika, by the way, because we have a wealth fund, and as long as the wealth name there or a term is there, I don't think we can comment on the MIF or EMA. Yeah.
But FDI, you're allowed to comment.
Yeah.
Like your view on
yes,
that.
but FDI clearly, yes. That's something that we need to work on. As much as possible, we don't want to comment on the Constitution, but there are really some provisions in our Constitution that probably need some revising. Maybe some of them should not be there. Echoing, Bernie Villegas, who says that, we were very emotional in 1987 when we created this Constitution. But of course, we're hoping that it will not include political elements in the revisions. No? So that's all I can say on that issue. But I think it's very crucial, that and a lot of developments related to this will be happening in the coming months. No? I don't know. I think I've answered your GDP question already, Doc Maggie. But clearly, structural reforms have to come in place, especially in agriculture and human capital. No? If we can really work on those, the PISA scores are again very low. If we can work on those, then we can really aspire for 7 to 9% growth. But as is, we think 5 to 7 is the more realistic growth range for the Philippines, and 6.3 this year, just because of the elections and inflation slowing down from 2 years of almost 6% prints. No? On inflation, why do we think it's higher than yours? It's we're very wary of rice, no, in particular, and oil. Oil prices, again, Doc Zeno mentioned almost $80 per barrel again. It was around 60 the same time last year. So you will have a year-over-year base effect from oil in 2Q, no, which could bring up the inflation rate close to, if not above 4%. Again, I think the way I hear Doc Eli, I could be wrong, Governor Eli, if he sees another 4% or higher print in the second quarter, could mean postponed rate cuts. No? Maybe he will wait for more sub 4% prints in the second semester before he will pull the trigger on, or the BSP MB pulls the trigger on the policy rate. Have I answered the question already? Yeah, it's mostly commodities and the risks that I put in that illustration earlier. Yeah, the supply challenges resulting from COVID, climate change, and the other one being, what's the other one again? The trade and geopolitical tensions. We need to watch very closely before we cut policy settings. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sir June. So we now will now have the open forum. We are also inviting the co-author of Dr. Maggie, Mr. Mark Gerald C. Ruiz, to join the open forum. Okay, let me read the next question. The first question we have from a Zoom participant. What are the risks of having a low employment rate? Is this a concern for the Philippines right now, given the latest employment data from PSA? So would you like to go first, Dr. Maggie, then Sir June?
What the question is?
The question is, what are the risks of having a low unemployment rate?
Low unemployment. Well, as far as I'm concerned, low unemployment is good. It
Yes,
means a lot of
actually it
people
is.
have jobs. So I don't know. June, do you have a different answer from mine? I won't go
Is it
into
a
the quality of the statistics. Some
Yes,
have
yes,
been
that's
commenting,
right.
but yeah,
So
it's good.
it's a very low headline unemployment rate, but the underemployment rate is still double digits.
Yeah, but it
Yeah.
has always been. So
Yeah, so
Yeah, is this a concern for the Philippines right now?
that should ease concerns about the low headline unemployment, because we still really need to work on the quality of jobs
Yes.
available to the public. But
Yes.
definitely we're encouraged by that low unemployment number. A lot more people have the paying capacity, and it helps at a time when inflation is really so painful for many of our kababayans.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yeah. The unemployment rate is we have a good number now, but we need
direction is
the
positive.
direction is high quality jobs.
Yeah, that's what we are. Well, of course, I would debate us on this. Someone, but not me. I mean, it's a debatable issue about what kind of numbers you have, what are you measuring, etc., etc. The usual things that are being debated. But if you're talking about direction, I think it's a good direction to be going down. We want, underemployment to go down. We want those numbers to go down.
Yeah, what's probably more risky is the news item shared by shared by a friend that minimum wages are being increased again. No? So I think that's the one that's more negative, no, than the lower, the record low unemployment rate since 2005.
Okay, let's move to the next question from our Facebook Live. Mr. Ronnie Encarnacion. Oh, he provided direct question to Sir June. Would you like to answer it? How do you see the hotel and gaming industry as a driver of growth in domestic private investments in the near or medium term? This is in line with the forecast that there will be uptake in tourism and interest rates cut in the second half of 2024.
Yeah, the sector has actually been doing a lot better than other segments. No, again, it's office, which has a lot of vacancies. No, also some high-end residentials, middle to high-end residential, because of the disappearance of POGOs. They have a lot of vacancies. But hotels, the numbers have been very encouraging. In fact, so many hotels are now reopening. They are renovating. Just right beside our office is Manila Mandarin, which was postponed because of the pandemic. Now, resuming the the resumption of its reopening. Shangri-La has reopened, not yet 100%, but it's happening nationwide. I was just in Cebu early this week to give a similar presentation, and I was a bit shocked by a number of hotel visitors. No, I went to the Ayala Mall in Cebu City, and Sunday night, no, it was full, no, at this level of the top level of the Ayala malls. No? And I think it's very encouraging, and it's not just Chinese visitors, it's not just Koreans, it's all types of visitors from all over the world. Domestic tourism has also been very strong, if I'm not mistaken. So that segment of the property sector looks very promising. And if our infra plans, especially if the private sector can participate more actively, because the pipeline, I think, is not as huge as it was back in 2016, no? Because build was prioritized over PPP. We should be able to attract more foreign tourists, no? Because compared to the region in absolute terms, we are still far behind the likes of Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. Again, apologies if my answers are a little long.
That's all right, sir. June, do you have something to add, Doc Maggie?
No,
No,
I think
okay.
June, yeah. June is the more frequent traveler
Okay.
between the two of us. But yeah, but
Oh.
in our last year's report, we already talked about tourism as a positive, a source of optimism, source of possible growth. So I'm actually happy to hear that it's coming true, even if I don't go to Cebu or to anywhere, just staying at home. So I agree. Tourism went down from COVID because of COVID, never really went back up to where it was, right? Not even today, I think.
Not yet,
Closer,
yeah.
but not yet. So again, another sector that hasn't gone back to pre-pandemic levels.
All right. So let's move to the next question. Last year, government underspending prevented reaching higher GDP growth, especially in the first half of 2023. What is your outlook regarding public spending? And do you project that government expenditure will be higher this year compared to last year's? Would you like to start, Dr. Maggie?
Yeah, for sure. I think even in their plan, they really planned much lower spending growth last year. I think it started out just 2%. I think they adjusted it upwards, but I remember it was a really, really low number. And I was a bit surprised by it. But then, as I thought it over, yeah, this was already sort of part of the consolidation plan. So even the budget last year was like just 5.5%, I think, higher than the 22. This time it's higher, I think 9.5%. So it's double. So for sure, I think they will try. At least they will try to bring that number back up.
Any follow-up, Sir June?
Yeah,
Additional thoughts?
actually, my comments at the beginning is a question about what exactly that was that caused us to see a somewhat disappointing print from the national government. In the second quarter, in particular, that 4.3% print that got a lot of people scared because slowing down from 6.3 to 4.3 led some to think we might even have a credit rating downgrade, because how can your collections be sustainable if your economy slows down from 6 to 4? So we heard some analysts saying, oh, it's because of the rate hikes that happened in 2022 and the early part of 2023. It's really that tightening that caused the slowdown of the economy. But if you look at the breakdown of GDP, it was really that almost 8% year-over-year decline in public sector consumption expenditures. That was the main reason for the slowdown, which is why when the polls were made for the third quarter GDP, our forecast was 6.1. No? When everybody else was saying no, it's gonna be below 5 because the policy tightening is already killing the economy. But the actual number came out to be 5.9, revised to 6%. Again, asserting our point or emphasizing our point that it was really public sector spending in the second quarter, which was the cause of the slowdown. But to me, I guess the important thing is to really be able to answer whether this is a one-off weak performance for government consumption, or this is something we can expect for the rest of the term of the current administration, just because our fiscal dynamics, our debt dynamics have deteriorated significantly.
We actually, we actually tried to collate the information on why that number was so low, and we got a range of reasons. I think the reasons are reversible. I think so. The range of reasons we gathered were: one, there were unreleased checks supposedly, and these were supposedly for the social and infrastructure programs. Another was unfinished registration and validation of beneficiaries for social spending. Then you have the various procurement, implementation, and payment issues. And I think these are reasons that can be fixed. I can't say easily fixed, but they can be fixed and should be fixed. And if they're planning to up their spending growth this year, then they should be able to do it. So, yeah.
Thank you, Doc Maggie.
Thanks.
Okay, so we go to the next question. The next questions are on RBH number 6. No, it's from a participant from Zoom. He said that it was stated in the author's recommendation to continue policy momentum to encourage investment. Will this include the proposed resolution of both houses number 6 or the proposed amendments to the economic provisions of the 1987 Constitution of the Senate?
Okay,
Doc Maggie.
so this is tricky because I am no
Yes.
longer PIDS senior fellow. I am already principal researcher at PSP. I have my opinions, of course, as a private citizen, but I would prefer not to air them. I think maybe June would be more at liberty to share his views.
All right, Sir June.
Sorry, which law is this?
RBH number 6, yeah.
Okay.
Cha-cha.
And what in particular is the question?
It was stated in the author's recommendation to continue policy momentum to encourage investment. Will this include the proposed RBH number 6 or the proposed amendments to the economic provisions of the Constitution?
Yeah. Yeah, if it's really just purely economic provisions, then we actually, personally, I actually support it. I'm not sure if our entire institution does. No? But if it will involve political revisions like extension of term limits, no, those things, then it could be suspect to, well, the confidence of the investors could be affected.
A related question from John Alexander from UST. How do you think the ongoing debate on People's Initiative and other political issues affect our inflation and other macro targets? Would you like to answer, Doc Maggie, first?
Well, personally, I don't see why they should or why they would. I mean, it's a free country. We can debate about a lot of things about the direction of our country. And I just like to go back to the recommendation is really just a recommendation that, you know, we want more FDI and whatever can raise that number, then we want it. If changing the constitution can lead to that direction, of course, June has already said that it depends on what kind of change and how clean the change is, meaning if you can just change, you know, it's laser change, like just changing exactly what needs to be changed, then of course these are, I think, things that we should pursue as a nation. But I also do not discount the opinions of other economists who are more wary, have more, you know, say that, you know, we should be careful, etc., etc. I think I don't think it's to place a negative light on debate, on not really affecting, but only to the extent that it does not affect, of course, the other important things we need to do in life, like go on with our investment plans, go on with our business, go on with our jobs. But I think, yeah, it should all be free to together decide on whether as a nation we should do this or not.
Yeah, if I may add, Cha, no? Again, I'm echoing Bernardo Villegas here, who was a co-author of the 87 Constitution, that, you know, we can have legislation that helps maybe protect some industries or put some limits on ownership for property. We can legislate those. But among countries in Southeast Asia, my understanding, or at least that's how Dr. Bodega said it, there are no such constitutional provisions that everything should be Filipino first. No? Because if you have that provision, it can always be used by, you know, as a legal basis for not allowing foreigners to participate in very important investments in our country. So the removal of such Filipino first statements in the Constitution is seen as a positive, as long as the legislation that outside the Constitution, a different exercise altogether, is the one that ensures that, you know, just like Thailand, just like Malaysia, there are limits to certain types of industries that we think Filipinos should enjoy more, no? Or should enjoy more than the foreigners.
Yeah, and also when they compare countries, they always talk about Vietnam. I think that the side that doesn't want any change, they always refer to Vietnam, where, you know, you can't own land at all, state capitalism. So I think that's also a reason why we should not compare, because we have a very different type of society, type of economy. There we are, you know, more traditional and, well, more, you know, the usual kind, market economy. They're state capitalists. So I don't think that should be something that we hang our hat on, that just because Vietnam doesn't. So I mean, for PIDS, I think PIDS should continue to study this. whether or not this would be good for the country or not. And yeah, and the debate should be, as we always say in PIDS, evidence-based, and independent and without any biases. And I think if the debates that are going on now will help drive this kind of thinking, research, then I think that should be good. Because I used to be a reporter. I knew June from way back when I was a reporter. I've been writing about this cha-cha for every. I wrote about this. I almost every president, somehow there was talk of cha-cha always emerging. So from that cycle, continuous cycle, you know that there needs to be something to be improved, because why do people keep bringing it up every president that we have? So yeah, so I think that should be something we really should study. And we had, I think the PIDS also had Dr. Rui Vivar as guest, and she was talking about how Vietnam was able to raise their investment, and it was really, they had a linchpin investor, which I think was, if I'm not mistaken, Samsung. And that is where it sort of, there was a network, and that those network economies, which is responsible for the FDI surge. I mean, a large part of it explained by that. So yeah, so if we can somehow fix our house and get even just one linchpin investor, as Dr. Sarafika also of PIDS always talks about, if just get that one pivotal, right? We also have friend of June, Dr. Monette. We just get that one pivotal investor that can, haul in the others, then that would be great for the country.
All right.
One more comment, if okay.
Sure, Sergeant. Go ahead.
Yeah. So again, hello to Monette, number one. Number two is, you know, artificial intelligence, diba? This is the new thing, and stock markets in the US are doing well because of this. Nvidia, which is just very near us, no, Taiwan, is one of the stars of the AI space. We feel that there could be more investments related to this because, because of the China-Taiwan tensions. For their country to manage risk, they would want to diversify. And they've partnered with the Vietnamese, they've partnered with many Southeast Asian countries, but I haven't heard of any yet, any partnerships with the Philippines yet. No. But I also want to comment that this narrative that the Constitution is the only thing that is keeping us from progressing and catching up with the rest of the region is a little bit exaggerated. Oh, it's actually exaggerated. And I echo again, if you watch ANC all the time, see Steve Cohenheng, who would say that, really there has to be an evidence-based analysis, that the reason why people don't go to the Philippines is solely because of the constitutional provisions. There are many elements like the coup d'etats of the 80s, the many political transitions that happened during that time, and of course the lack of infrastructure, the lack of resources for education, primary school expenditures still very small considering that students share the classrooms. There's a morning shift, there's an afternoon shift. So until we really isolate all of these issues and problems, it's very hard to push that narrative that it's only the constitutional provisions that got us left behind. And opportunities such as the AI and robotics that are currently trending can only be maximized if we also address all of these other issues, not just the provisions in the Constitution.
Yeah, in summary, Chari, it's a very there are very wide range of opinions, right?
Yes,
And
exactly.
yeah, and even our national scientist for economics, I think Dr. Pavella, his argument is that we have to change because we need to change the climate, the attitude to project ourselves as an open economy to get them in. Then you have another one. Then you have Dr. Shell Habito saying, another thing. saying that we don't need this change, that we have these laws in place. And then there's going to be another opinion saying, yeah, we have these laws in place, but it's still nothing. So we still need to do something more. And this is it. So it really, even among economists, put them in one room. Of course, we are famously known to disagree when put in one room. But for this particular topic, I think this is where you have even more uh, disagreement. So yeah, so going back to your question as whether this would bring down, growth and inflation, push up inflation. My answer is I hope not, and I don't think it will. And I think it's healthy to debate. I don't know. I won't say it's healthy to keep bringing it up in Congress, but but that is also their role. If they think that there's change needed in the laws, then that's their role also. I will not take that away from them also.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. So we move on to another question. What do you think would bring the Philippine economy to a much faster growth, like 7 to 8%, so we can expedite poverty reduction and significantly improve the quality of life for Filipinos? Can we harness the benefits from demographic dividend? We can start, Dr. Maggie.
Yes, I'll start. I think that's still a positive for the country. Although our own PIDS researcher, Mike Abrigo, has more to say about that and saying that demographic dividend may not, you may be ending sooner than we expected. So I think the time to capitalize from it is now. And as to what will bring up growth, I think I've been like sirang plaka here. It's really investment. Is really, especially if you want to bring our debt down, reach growth paths that allow us to bring that debt down quickly. It really has to be more investment in the economy, of course, domestic and foreign. And we've not been in the game in the FDI, so we hopefully we can be able to attract that kind of investment into our country.
Mr. Okay, yes. Mr. Mark Ruiz, would you like to add your thoughts?
Yes, just to echo Dr. Maggie and Sir Jun Nery's points earlier. It's really a lot of the problems that in GDP before were on government underspending. I'm reminded that there were some discussions before that of the possible changes in the procurement law. Well, maybe that would somehow help address some of those issues. And the same, it would also have to be increase investments and sustain this strong domestic demand in the country po.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mark Ruiz. I think our participants are very much interested in our topic today. We received more than 30 questions for our panelists, but we have a little time left. So
I'd just like to introduce Mark. Mark is the future of PIDS. Okay, he will be he's the future. So I'm talking about demographic dividend. Okay, so our demographic dividend is being addressed by Mark. So,
okay. So, okay, going back, as I said, there are more than 30 questions, but we have little time left. So our last question, we go to our last question for Dr. Maggie and Sir June. From House of Representatives, CPBRD, Julius Dumangas, he said that for several years now, the government has been addressing the anemic public spending issue in the government through GAA as a release document, policy, authorization for agencies to conduct early procurement short of award, even as Congress is still deliberating the proposed national budget and cash-based budgeting. Number one, have you done evaluations on the effectiveness of these measures in addressing the issue of anemic government spending? And number two, do you have other policy recommendations which may be considered by Congress as part of the proposed reforms in the pending budget modernization bill?
Okay, so I guess I have commented on the modernization bill, so my comments are online. It's a pretty long because I sort of went comprehensive on that. But in terms of like the nitty-gritty, of course the PIDS is doing that. Except apologies, I'm not that fellow who is on top of that. I think that would be, if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Adora. Is the one looking at these things. Yeah, so we could refer our the one who questioned from CPBR to maybe ask Dr. Navarro if she has. I think she has. She should have studies.
My connection is not working well. All right. I'm back.
Yeah, maybe June. I'm a
Sir
more of a
June.
macroeconomist, so I don't really. Yeah.
Yeah, do you have any thoughts, Sir June, on the questions?
No, we don't have such
No.
an evaluation.
Okay.
Yeah, but in fact, we're actually curious to find out now.
So PIDS will be
So
doing
that
that. Yeah.
yeah, so that we'll be able to have a better forecast for 2025. Yeah, to have a feel for where are really the obstacles, where are the challenges on government outlays. But if I may add lang on the 7 to 9% growth, just two things. Number one, the permits. The PCCI folks are not here, but if they were here, they would have probably commented that maybe we should really streamline. We have streamlined to some extent, but permits continue to be a hurdle to a lot of investors. And in some countries, it's so streamlined, you just have to go to one or two offices. Now, in our case, you have to go to many offices, and the offices themselves have to ask permits from each other. So those types of complications make it very difficult. The other key element I want to again emphasize is human capital, education and health. Unfortunately, more challenging in an environment where fiscal consolidation is being carried out. For education, yung PISA, I think there's a little bit of distortion there because Filipinos like to always answer in English, just like in the Miss Universe. They always like to answer the Q&A in English, when the reality is when we answer the questions in the PISA, we have difficulty in the translation. That a science, for example, or a math question becomes a hurdle because of English. And that could be distorting the PISA scores a bit. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
In a presentation that was made to PIDS earlier, the investors, prospective investors who were looking at the Philippines. We were surprised because we are quite infamous for those PISA scores, but they actually point to our labor force as one reason that they want to be here, having a skilled labor force. A large part of that actually is ability to speak a foreign language, which is the English language. So I think we like to talk about doom and gloom, but maybe there also is another side to these things. I'd like to believe that we still have something to offer, and that those investments will come in, and we just need one pivotal investor. If we were to believe what the other studies are saying, just need one pivotal investor to come in, and if we do well with that one pivotal investor, then we should be able to build that network of investors coming in and helping our country develop and grow and develop.
That's right. So, okay, before we end, may we ask our panelists to give your closing remarks, starting with Sir June, and then Sir Mark Ruiz, and then Dr. Maggie.
The ladies first. Joke.
Oo nga. That's what I thought.
Ladies
Baka,
first.
baka daw age before beauty, kaya ako
All right,
mauuna.
go ahead, Dr. Maggie.
First.
You can.
No, and I want kasi to be able to thank, of course, June. Unahin ko na si Mark because Mark has been working with me. Just like to thank him and thank you for participating in the chat. In this chat, I know it's a challenge for you. I mean, well, it maybe I'm talking about myself because I'm an introvert. So, so thank you, Mark. And of course, I'd like to thank Mr. June Mary for kindly and Yusek Zeno for kindly accepting my invitation to be part of this webinar. You really added value to the discussion. So really thank you very much. Leaving kids with a hopeful heart that the Philippine economy will continue to grow and improve and develop.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maggie, Sir Mark Ruiz.
For me, I would also like to express gratitude to Mamagi and to Sir June Neri for being here. Going back to the question earlier, how would the economy perform? I guess throughout this discussion, it shows that we remain optimistic as always in how the country would perform. And just to add, since BPI is here, we had a study on financial inclusion that was also published last year, and it showed that after the pandemic there was an increase in the use of mobile devices and embedded finance in the country, and we hope that that would also contribute somehow to the economy in the future. Well, we will always continue watching how the government reforms would play out, and as well as all the other investment opportunities that would come to the Philippines. Thank you all. Thank you also to our co-author, Ria Miral, who isn't here today.
Thank you. Thank you, Sir Mark Ruiz. So your turn, Sir June.
Okay, the oldest. No, really, we always, BPI always appreciates, me and BPI appreciate PIDS always inviting us to these types of forum events, virtual or in person. Dr. Arbeta, thank you so much for always believing in us. No? Of course, Doc Maggie, thank you for inviting us, and of course, good luck to your new assignment. Also, Mark, thanks so much for such a good job, no, and also participating in today's forum. We will look forward to your report for the 2025 outlook. And of course, if there are, if there is anything that we can do to help out PIDS, BSP, and all of these involved offices, we'd be more than willing to contribute. So I was president of the PES for a year, and really, it really works. It really helps us a lot, no, in the private sector if we are able to interact well with people in research. No? So that's it. We're optimistic about 2024, a little bit more optimistic than Doc Maggie. Again, because of two things, inflation slowing down and in preparation for next year's elections. But as always, we all...
I'm optimistic about inflation.
Yeah, that's right. Our inflation is a little bit more pessimistic. But very promising prospects for the Philippines this year. However, that's only for a 5 to 7% growth rate. So we need PIDS, NEDA, and all other research institutions to help us figure out what will bring us to 7 to 9% growth, and really inclusive type, not just fast growth, but something that will really help the ordinary Filipino at least keep up with the ASEAN, because we've been overtaken by Vietnam and many other smaller countries. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sir June. Thank you so much to our amazing panel for your valuable insights. And to our audience also for the active participation in the very rich discussion today. Let's give each and everyone, a round of virtual applause. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Before we officially close the program, let me announce the raffle winners. 2 winners were picked from the Zoom audience and 1 winner from Facebook. From Zoom, we have Mr. Alvin Arogo from the Philippine National Bank and Gabriel Gan from the University of Santo Tomas Graduate School. From Facebook, our winner is Ronnie Encarnacion. Congratulations to all of the winners. The PIDS Tech team will coordinate with you on how to claim your prizes. So once again, we appreciate your attendance today. The speakers' presentations will be available on the PIDS website at www.pids.gov.ph/events. Meanwhile, you may download a copy of the study from the link provided in the chat box for Zoom participants and in the comment section for Facebook participants. Please help us also improve our webinars. Kindly answer our feedback form through the link flashed on your screens and provided in the chat box. For those watching us via Facebook Live, the link is shared in the comment box as well. Please note that the e-certificate of participation will be sent to your email automatically following the submission of the feedback form. Your feedback and recommendations are helpful to us as we work to make the upcoming events even better. So keep in touch with us as well. You may follow PIDS on Facebook, Twitter or X, and YouTube channel for more updates. Feel free to visit our websites also for more information. So we hope to have you again in our future events. Join us in another PIDS webinar on Feb 29 from 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., Charting Path to Quality Education in the Philippines by 2030. Finally, we would like to extend our gratitude to various organizations from the government, academe, civil service organizations, and other international organizations, private sectors, and our partners from the media for joining us today. We hope that this webinar has not only sparked conversations, but also prepared the ground for meaningful discourse. Again, thank you very much. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat.